Alrighty, good afternoon or good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Wednesday. Sorry for getting this video out a little bit later. I just need to set some things up. So, in continuing with our mini unit, hopefully you found those videos about the history of paper money to be enjoyable. If you haven't seen them already, I do recommend you check them out. Do the KWL. It kind of gives a nice backdrop to why we deal with paper money the way we do, and it'll lead into some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So today, I'm going to take bits and pieces. This is from chapter 2 in your workbook. I've put up the chapter 2 notes on our website, on Teams, inside of our files folder, so you can find it in class materials. I'm going to go through just a couple sections here. So kind of our goals is I want to do 2.1. And another lesson that I'll have, I will do what's called simple interest, as well as something called compound interest. So I'm not going to deal with anything about budgeting, but those are the two sections. So today I'm going to talk about 2.1, which is all about income. So this is how we make money. So there's a couple sections here. Basically, this is split into two parts. First up is what kind of jobs are there that pay, or like how do jobs pay us? And then the other part is dealing with some terminology that you'll encounter in the workforce as an employee of any job and kind of how to navigate it. So there's not too much math, but there's going to be a lot of helpful information here for when you're out in the real world. So a person can be paid for his work in different ways. The most common, there's several, but the main ones that I'm going to talk about are these four here, and I'll talk about each one of them in separate sections. So there's salaries, there's commission, there's wages, and finally there's something called piecework. So you've probably heard those words, but I'm going to break them down for you on what they mean. So two other points, there's a difference between an employer, so this would be someone's boss. So a boss or a company, this is who hires you to do a job, and then the employee is the person who's doing the job, or they work for someone. So if you work at Starbucks, then you're an employee of Starbucks. Myself, I'm a teacher. I'm an employee of the Vancouver School Board. So first part we're going to talk about is I'm going to talk about salary for a second. So first up, I want to talk about what types of jobs pay a salary. So as I go through this, I want you to think about what types of jobs pay or would pay as a salary. So it says salary is the amount of money you are paid over a fixed period of time, and salary is usually calculated on a monthly or yearly basis. And when you're working for a salary, you're either paid weekly, every 2 weeks, semi-monthly, or monthly. And the key bit of information here is that you've received the same amount of money each pay period. So the example that they give is a teacher. So teachers are paid on salary. Now, the way we can think about this is you get paid the same regardless of what you do, or I'll say how much you work. Because you get paid the same amount over each pay period, it means that for jobs that are on salary, it doesn't matter if you're working 8-hour days or 10-hour days or 3-hour days, you're going to get paid the same amount. The way you can think about this is jobs that have a consistent goal, or another way I'll put it is job requirement. So what I mean by that is the job is always going to be there on some level. On certain days it may be more strenuous, on some days it may be less, but inconsistent or consistently you're doing the same kind of job day in, day out. So for example, as a teacher, my role is to teach grade 9 math. So I have a whole year to teach grade 9 math. Each day is going to be different, but because I have this specific goal in mind, they can pay you kind of a consistent amount and just spread it out over the year. Another example would be like a manager. So if you're a manager for a company, you have to make schedules. You have to deal with people calling in sick. You have to deal with all these little things that it takes to run a company. And the company needs to be consistently run week after week after week. Some weeks are going to be easier, some weeks are going to be harder, but they want to be consistent with, or they want it to run consistently, so they're going to pay you the same amount. With each system of payment, there is a pro list and a con list. So the pro for this one, think about it for a second, but you get this paid the same amount. So the biggest pro is if work is easy, you still get paid, or I'll put short as well. So for example, teachers get paid over spring break. I don't necessarily do much. The classrooms aren't open, there aren't students in the class, but I still get paid. Well, the pro is also a con because you get paid the same amount each time. So if work is, say, hard, or you have to work long hours, so you have to stay late, you don't get paid more. So a good example of this would be, so I'll put spring break, I'll follow the teacher idea. Well, when can you think a teacher may be busy? The two that come to mind are around report cards, or at the end of the year it gets really busy, or you could think for parent teacher interviews is another good one, because all the teachers have to stick around late at night, and there's nothing wrong with it, but we don't get paid anymore for it. It's part of our job description, it's something that we have to do. So during that period where we're working extra, we don't get paid anymore. So salaries, you'll generally see jobs like teachers, managers. If you can think of any other ones, feel free to put them in your notes. Another good one for me is CEOs that I can think of, like a manager of a company or the head of a company. Couple things for if you're receiving a salary, and this will also be important if you're receiving income in a different way. So these terms are all important for us. And you can find this on the first page of 2.1 in your notes. So I just put a little star next to it. So the ones that are related to how much you get paid, if you have a job or if you're getting a job, on your paycheck, you'll see two things, or two parts. There's a gross income, and this is the person's salary before any deductions are taken off. So things like taxes, you could have health benefits. If you work for a union, there's something called union dues. All of these take money off of your paycheck, and then whatever's left is what's called your net income. It's like what you can grab in a net. Everything else that gets away is all of your deductions. So you can say what is left after deductions from gross income. Last but not least, third in this, there's deductions. And what we can think about is gross income minus your deductions equals your net income. And that's net. Finally, there's the term income, which just means money that you get for working a job. Lastly, some of you may have heard of this one term called overtime. What we can think of is a normal workday is 8 hours. Some jobs will work more, some jobs will work less, but on average, most jobs work 8 hours a day. And the maximum that they can schedule you for is this 8 hours. Overtime is working beyond that. So this is working beyond 8 hours in a day or more than 40 hours a week. And where I got that number from, if a normal workday is 8 hours, you have 5 working days. So I get 8 times 5 gives me 40 hours a week. So a normal work week, most people work 40 hours a week. So overtime is when you go over this normal period of time. Literally take the word overtime. You're going over the normal amount of time that's given to you. And a couple things about overtime. Overtime hours generally pay more or pay you more. So we'll talk about wages in a little bit, but working past this 8 hours, there's usually a bonus that you get. A couple things, or what you might hear is someone referred to as time and a half. So that means if you go past 8 hours, each hour of overtime is worth one and a half hours. You're basically getting paid an extra half hour for every hour of overtime you work. So you're going to get paid more. Another type of overtime that you might hear is what's called double time. And this is each hour is equal to 2 regular hours. So the idea is if you normally get paid $10 per hour, as double time it would be, so I'll put regular, in this case, if you got paid double time, you would get paid $20 per hour, just for the overtime hours that you work. So when you go past that regular workday for yourself. So calculating, a couple ways you can do it. You can figure out how many, so they have 2 methods here. So number 1, if you get paid $20 per hour and you work 5 hours of overtime at an hourly rate of time and a half. So this part right here, I'm going to take as 1.5 times. The way you can think about that is you're paid $20 an hour, you multiply that by 1.5. So at each hour you work, you're actually getting paid $30 for overtime. So they do your wage.
Arnie Gwynn, please come to the office. Arnie Gwynn, please come to the office. Thank you.
Sorry about that. They do wage times 1.5 to give overtime wage, or I'll just put OT wage. And then they find out the once they find that out, they multiply it by the number of hours to give your overtime pay, which I'll just call OT pay. Another way you can think about it is you can change the amount of hours you work because each hour is actually worth an hour and a half. So what they've done here, rather than multiply the money by 1.5, they've actually multiplied the hours. So what they're saying here is they've taken the 5 overtime hours that they've worked, multiplied that by 1.5, and it equates to 7.5 regular hours, so at $20 per hour. So then you would take $20 times it by 7.5, and you get your final answer of 150. In both cases, you're going to get the same answer, so it's up to you on how you want to do this. I'm going to skip examples because I mostly want to talk about the different jobs, and I don't want to have this video run too long. Next up, I want to talk about something called commission. You may have heard of jobs that work for commission, but I want to actually kind of share a story because I think some of us are old enough to remember both of these shops. So Best Buy and Future Shop were two competing companies. Future Shop has since gone away, but Best Buy has stuck around. Now, one of the things you'll have noticed, or your parents will have noticed, is when you walk into a Future Shop, so I'll do the example here, you're going to get surrounded by Future Shop people. They're going to come running from everywhere, and they're all going to have the same question: can I help? And then sometimes when you enter Best Buy, once you enter the store, you basically get some tumbleweeds. And it's super hard to find anyone. Well, it's not the fact that Best Buy was run poorly, like it's not that it didn't have enough employees. The difference was Future Shop was a commission store. So they paid their employees on something called commission, and Best Buy is a wage store or a wage job. I'll put store. So they paid their employees a wage. So how commission works is for every sale that you make, so anything that you sell, you're going to make a percentage of that sale. So again, I'll do a pro and a con list. Pro list for this is there is a chance you can make a lot of money. So what I mean by that is if you're better at selling, that directly turns into more money. Well, there's a downside to this, and it basically revolves around the same thing. Maybe you're not so good at selling things, so there's also a chance to make less money. So one example, Let's do the opposite. Say you're worse at selling. It means you're not really going to get anything. So, empty wallet, no money. But the thing is, there's more than just this. This one right here is related to you as an employee. And what I mean by that is, if you're really like energetic and you come up and you're like, hey, how can I help? Like, I want to help make the best thing or help you make the best decision, so you buy that thing that you absolutely love, and then you help the person answer all their questions. If you're really good at that, chances are you're going to make a sale and you're going to get paid a percentage of that. If you can keep that up, you're going to get paid lots of money. Conversely, if you're like, hey, do you want to buy something? I don't know much about it, but here, just buy it. You're going to freak people out. They're going to run away from you, and you're not going to be able to sell something. But there's a second piece of that. There's more than just you that's playing into if something sells. So if there's what I'll say low business, so no one shows up, it doesn't matter that you are really good at selling or not. You're not going to make money. It's going to be the same thing, just empty pocket. So this depends partially on you, but it also depends on the store. Conversely, if there's lots of business, then you don't necessarily have to be as good at selling things, because there's still going to be a good chance that you're going to make a sale. If lots of people are coming into the store, someone's going to buy from you. Now, there's three types. There's what's called straight commission. So this is you only get a percentage of what you sell. So the problem with this is, what happens if you sell nothing? Well, in this case, your paycheck, it's nothing. You have to sell something in this case. The second one works the same way, but it's called graduated. So when you think graduated, a good example is to think of a graduated cylinder, how it has levels, how there's different levels that you can attain to. So once you reach a level 1, you're going to move into a higher bracket. Another way you can think of it is with grades. When you graduate elementary school, you move into high school and you do different things. When you graduate from high school, you move into university or college, and then you do different things. So what graduated commission might look like, if I go down and over here, I'll make 2 columns, so sales, and then what's called a commission rate. So this is in a percent that what you get of the sales. So if you sell $0 to, say, $3,000, they might give you 2% on all of that. Then from $3,000 to $10,000, they might give you 4%, and then more than $10,000, they'll pay you 6%. So the way you can think about this is 2% on the first $3,000, 4% on what you earn after up to 10,000, and finally 6% for anything after. So this is the same thing as regular commission, but now it has this reward system built in for the employee that the better you are at selling, you're going to get more on the sales that you make after a certain baseline. This is oftentimes for things like high-end commission. So if you sell a lot of things, you're going to get paid better than if you just sell a few things. And it's rather than based on the price of the item, it's also based on just how much you've sold in a period of time. Last but not least, there is a salary plus commission. So a salary is the same thing that I was talking about before. So you always get paid this base amount plus commission on top of it. Now, it's usually a lower percent than the other two because the company is paying you this amount here. The upside to it, I'll start with the downside. Downside, it's harder to make more on this one because it gives you a lower percentage. But the upside is you're never going to get paid $0. You're going to at least get paid this minimum salary. Oops. One of the things I'll talk about is how each one of these jobs plays into sort of a job security. Having a salary is super duper safe. You're going to get paid the same amount of money each time your pay period comes around. You know exactly how much you're going to get, so when it comes time to budget, you know exactly how much you're going to make in a month, in a week, in a year, and you're able to budget around that. By contrast, commission is our high risk, high reward setup where you can make lots of money, potentially more than if you were getting paid a salary, or if it's really bad business, you'll get paid far less. So how this works is your commission pay, so this is your income. I'm sorry about the lawnmower outside, is equal to the sales, so in dollars, how much you have sold, times the commission rate, and you want it as a decimal. So for example, if you had, I'll use this example here. So April's commission rate in a furniture store is 8%. So she's sold $415. So how much, or sorry, she received a commission of $415. It's asking how much the bedroom suite cost. So this part here is our commission. I'll give it a letter C. This is our rate. I'll call it R. And how much the bedroom suite cost? I'll call that S. So what they're saying is commission C is equal to S times R. Now 8%, as a decimal, I take 8, I divide it by 100, and I drop the percent, and that gives me 0.08. So my calculation, I go 415 equals S times 0.08. Well, I want to get S on its own, so I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying by 0.08, and I'm going to divide both sides by 0.08. And that's going to give me a final value of what the thing cost, which was $5,187.50. So if someone under this example, if April sold this bedroom suite for $5,187, she gets paid 415. So this is what April takes. Now, that might sound really good, but maybe she only sells one of these a month. And if she doesn't sell anything else, suddenly this job doesn't sound quite so good. I'm going to move on. Wages is our third option. Wages apply to people for an hourly rate of pay. So this is we can think of it as any sort of part-time job or where your schedule is not consistent. So if your schedule changes around from week to week, if you have certain days off, a job might choose to pay you hourly. So how we calculate it is with these two equations right here. So one of the things about wages is that there is overtime. So if I move over, types of jobs that have it, you have restaurant, or if you work at a coffee shop, you're a barista. These type of jobs get paid hourly. A lot of warehouse jobs, so say if you work for Amazon, you're going to get paid hourly, and any sort of retail job, you'll also get paid hourly. So a pro to this system is that you get paid for what you work. So if you work 8 hours a day for a full week, so you get 40 hours, you're going to get paid for those 40 hours. There's no having to make a sale or not. Additionally, it differs from salary in the sense that because you get paid for what you work, you also get overtime. The downside to this is because the job isn't quite as consistent, your hours from week to week can vary. And why this is a downside is the amount you get paid will change. You're still going to get paid for the hours that you work, but for example, if you work 10 hours one week and then you work 20 hours another week, that 10-hour work week is going to pay you less than a 20-hour work week. So it's less consistent than if you were working as a salary where it wouldn't matter. But overtime applies. So the main way that we calculate it is you can think of it as how much you get paid per hour times how many hours you work. The other way we need to think about it is if there's no overtime, you can just use this. You can just use number 1. So if there's no overtime, use method 1. If you have overtime though, you need to use method 2. So this is and the regular pay is the number 1 equation in there, and then you need to do a second one, which is your overtime rate times overtime hours. So potentially for questions like these, you need to do a little bit more calculating. Because we're getting super short on time here, all of these examples can be found in your textbook. They're pretty good. I'm only going to ask a couple of them and I'll make it fairly open. So I'm going to skip them for now. The last type of job is what's called piecework. Now, it's not piece as in like this type of piece, it is piece as in pieces of something. So piecework applies to the employment where the worker is paid a fixed price rate for each unit produced, regardless of time spent producing the item. You can sort of think of it like commission for building things. Doesn't have to be building things, but it's usually accomplishing some sort of job. A good example, if you're a mechanic, you charge someone a certain amount to change your oil. It doesn't matter how long the mechanic takes to change your oil. So an example, so you can say an oil change, if it costs $50, does not matter if it takes 10 minutes or 10 hours. You're only going to pay the person $50. Another example is, we have them here in BC. If you're a tree planter, where you go out into the woods and then you plant trees, you actually get paid per tree planted. And it's usually something like 15 cents per tree planted. Another example I can think about, but I did not have a picture for, is say you're an artist. So if you're painting, you get money from selling your art. So each piece of art you make, you can sell and gain money. It doesn't matter how long it takes to make, you're going to get a certain amount for each piece. Again, as always, there's a pros and a cons. The pro is the better or faster you are, it's going to equal more money. Downside, the slower you are equals less money. And because this kind of relates to commission, you might be able to make the argument for art being commission because you're selling and getting money from the art piece. But in this case, because we're making something, I'm going to consider it piecework. Another pro and con of this system, though. So the better and faster you are, the more money you're going to make. The slower you are, you're going to get less money. Try and think of another one. This one's challenging because it's not very common. So what I would say is, this isn't really a con for the person working. This is actually a con for the customer. And this is one of the things that you need to be aware of. Because piecework is based on how fast something is done, meaning the faster you get the job done, the sooner you can move on to something else and then get paid for that. The faster you are, the more money the person's going to make. This can sometimes lead to the employee cutting corners. which means that that mechanic might be taking advantage of you in some way or shape or form. Maybe they're kind of fixing your car, but they're not doing a really good job. That tree planter, maybe they were planting trees, but they were going by really fast and the trees weren't properly planted, so they don't actually survive. So this kind of job can sometimes lead to this taking advantage of a customer. In fact, this actually applies to commission as well. Because all that is involved is making a sale, the person can try and take advantage of you by selling you something that maybe you don't need. So in both commission and piecework, there's this issue with honesty. So as a customer, it's important to be aware of which stores do this to try and avoid being taken advantage of. And how the equation for this works is amount per item times number of items equals pay. And then the last equation I'll give is amount per item times number of items divided by number of hours equals your hourly pay. So even though you don't get paid hourly, you can convert it to, think of it like a wage. The faster you work, the higher your wage is going to be. The slower you work, or longer it takes you to finish things, the lower your wage is going to be. So these are the two equations that come up. But if you want to figure out how much someone gets paid, you're going to use number one. If the question asks you about a wage, you're going to use number two. All right. I'm giving this mostly as a set of information. I'm going to have a small assignment later in the week or early next week on it. What I'd like you to do is try a couple of the questions. Try and familiarize yourself with the language. I know we're getting pretty long, so I'm not going to jump into too many examples. But if you have these notes in your workbook, take a look, try a couple of the examples. So just try a few. Again, this is for practice. The main thing that I want you to do is realize what type of questions they're asking. So look for the words like salary, commission, piecework. That'll be the best indicator of what this is asking of you. As always, take care, stay safe, have a good one. Bye.